I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm joined today by Michael Whetstone, the production designer of Abbott Elementary. And Michael, you've talked about how each new season of Abbott has kind of been, an exercise in making the sets work more efficiently for the crew, while also adding to the sets and expanding the world of the show in the world of the show in general. We'll get into some of the specific sets in just a second, but to kick things off, talk a bit about what you mean by making the sets work more efficiently for the crew, and what did that process look like for season 3?
Wow, good question. And Luca, thanks for having me. Really nice to be here. Great opening question. I think when you start out making a TV show, especially this one, we were a mid-season replacement show. A lot of people forget that. Our first season was 12 episodes, I think. So entering season 3, we had established ourselves as a hit, and so it was time to think long term. And by long term, I mean sets. We have sets that are outside,
Right.
that are standing on the Warner Brothers lot, that are in the rain and the sun, and they take a beating. So, to get back to your question, what does it mean to make sets work more efficiently? Part of that efficiency is having them not get destroyed by weather.
Right.
So we literally rebuilt our school facade completely from the ground up.
Wow.
Using real concrete, 40,000 bricks. We ordered our bricks from New York. We wanted a specific kind of East Coast look to our bricks. So that all of that is part of the efficiency, and then maybe some people will notice, but our school, the opening of our school, grew by 15 feet this year. Wow. And that makes it easier for our camera crews to cross shoot. Abbott Elementary shoots 3 cameras at a time, and so having space to work is something that helps us be more efficient.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine. I love that you shared that, because that's not something the casual viewer would necessarily pick up on. And I also understand that for season 2, there was kind of a commitment from the studio to give the show kind of more of a robust presence. Is that something that they kind of wanted you to keep up for season 3 as well, or did they want you to kind of go in a different direction for this season?
Season 2, the studio actually decided to knock down the L tracks from the original ER TV show and put our school facade right where the L tracks used to be. So in doing that, the idea was to put our school facade on the Warner Brothers tour route, so it became part of the Warner Brothers story as you toured around.
Right.
And so, yes, when we rebuilt it for season 3, we kept it in the exact same spot. We just made it out of truly real materials that will last as long as the show lasts. We won't have to start our season every year with 3 or 4 weeks fixing the school every time.
Yeah, that's ideal. That's what you would hope. And this season, we obviously have a new sit in the school district offices, because Janine leaves Abbott at the beginning of the season to work for the school district. And it really is an entirely new set. And I feel like it's one of the most unique ones on the show, because it really has such a different vibe from Abbott. So walk me through the process of constructing that set and finding the character of those school district offices, because I feel like it's so specific.
I think in order to talk about that set, I need to go back to the end of season 2, where Janine and Gregory have a very heavy moment a lot of us can relate to in a relationship, where will they, won't they? Yeah, they've discovered that they like each other, but that puts extra pressure on a relationship. When you finally realize you like somebody at that level, you don't want to get into it before you're ready. So
yes,
putting that aside, Janine, I think that influenced Janine's character to go to take this job. So it's interesting. We had an interview with our costume and hair and makeup, a group interview, and we talked about how Janine's character is going off into this fresh environment. So now I can kind of speak to it architecturally. Right. If you think about our show, most of our show takes place in West Philly, different neighborhoods in West Philly, but most of the show is in West Philly. The school district is modeled after the real school district in Philadelphia, and that is in the more like proper downtown. I think it's called Franklin Town, but it's where the museums are, bigger architecture, and the school district is brand new. They've got all the money. They've got a brand new building. It's maybe 10 years old. So we wanted you to really, especially this season, it feels like we got outside of our school more and more and more this season. You see, we can talk about Rubenstein's later, but there's a bar where they meet because now Janine's not in the school. So where do they meet after work to discuss life and have that all important kind of catch up? I call it character catch up. So now speaking like specifically to that set, my art director, Susan Wexler, and I probably discussed that set. We had the benefit of knowing it was coming and having quite a bit of prep time to plan it. And we sort of fashioned it around our art department. When we were trying to figure out the scale of it, I looked out at our art department. I said, wow, the scale of this and the pattern, the rhythm of the offices feels about right. There's something about this that feels right. The texture, the concrete, all of that stuff we added later, and the large windows, but just to get a sense of the scale of it. And plus our stage is only so big, so that we went end to end and made it as big as we could. Within that space, though, there's a sameness to the offices, if you will, but then we had to say, how do you define each character? Who's got the office with the $1 million view of Philadelphia out their window? Who's got the office with a tiny clear-story window? So that was how we started defining each character in their office and what they would have. And then our set decorator, Sherry Ledwith, really got into the tiniest details of Philadelphia Flyers keyboard, what kind of lighting they would have. So yes, there was a lot of sameness to the offices. Quinta wanted it that way, but there were also little things that let each character stand out.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a perfect segue to my next question, because I'd be interested in how you approach Janine's office specifically, because on the one hand, yes, she does kind of bring her personality into that office because she has to. That's where she has to work for a great period of time. But on the other hand, she never feels quite comfortable there, as we see. She never feels quite home there. So, how did you and the art department approach or incorporate that duality into the design of her office, if that makes sense?
There were actually storylines in the season, and I don't know what has aired versus what hasn't exactly, but and what we can talk about. But yes, there were. Quinta has this amazing capability of getting into the tiniest details on all of these things. So this isn't. I'd love to tell you I just knew exactly what should be in Quinta's office, but we have these conversations and we picked out desks and file cabinets. Every office has the same desk and the same file cabinet. But after that, we started saying, okay, Janine would have plants in her office. She would want to have she would want to have her work off of her own laptop. That's just her style. She wants to, and there's a scene this year where the district wants her to have a district approved computer. So there's things like that. We wanted to feel like, yeah, she had started working at the district, but she hadn't quite planted her flag fully there.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And you kind of, what I also think is interesting, you kind of feel her absence at Abbott, and that kind of takes me to Abbott, because something I've always loved is that because Abbott is so underfunded, I feel like there's such a commitment or such an effort from the teachers working there, and thus from your department, to infuse the school with such a sense of personality, so that these students there have a comforting learning environment. And I think that really starts in the classrooms. So could you talk a bit about finding the styles for each of these, individual classrooms, and how or whether they, changed over the course of the 3 seasons as some of these, the teachers inhabiting them have changed?
Yeah, I love that you gravitate toward character, because everything we do is based on either a script or discussions about who these people are.
Right.
There is a reason when you walk into Barbara's classroom that she's still got a lesson above her board in how to write in script. She's old school. She believes in teaching. She's taught kids the same way for over 30 years. So there's a way she learned a long time ago, and she's a technophobe. She doesn't have a lot of tech in her office. Janine, being the very energetic, eager to help with everything. Her classroom is more modern. She's got more dry erase boards than the green boards. Her projects sort of reflect that. She's the first to embrace technology. She's always got computers in her room, and I could go on, but the characters haven't changed over necessarily inside of the school. I would say what changes is every single episode my art department has to become teachers. Like, we literally do all the lessons that are on the board. We have to understand what time of day it is. What are these teachers teaching? Does it make sense on the board? This season, we started using a smart board. Would they do the lesson on the board or the smart board? So these are things that have sort of impacted every teacher, without going into great detail on what every specific teacher does. These are things we're evolving with technology. The smart board was really fun this season. It's a little bit difficult to shoot. It creates a light imbalance in the room, and we have to pump up the light a little bit more. So there's that's the downside of technology. But yes.
That's been such an interesting aspect of this season, I found. I mean, the show has kind of explored technology throughout its entire run, because it's something you have to address when you're a show that takes place in a school. But I feel like this season in particular, from everything from AI platforms to iPads, and not knowing how to deal with when you can't charge your iPads. I just find the way the show deals with technology, especially this season, to be so fascinating. And it's been interesting to hear how that has also changed production for everyone. But that kind of tech, because you talked about each of the individual classrooms, and how they're filled with the personality of the teacher that inhabits it. I think that also kind of takes us to the characters' private spaces, because I read that at the beginning you were actually told you wouldn't see the characters' lives outside of the school, because this is a workplace comedy. But obviously the show has gone in a different direction, has explored some of the characters' private spaces. And I'd be interested to hear from you whether it kind of helped you that you had already explored their characters, in these classrooms, had already, instilled these classrooms with their personalities. Were you able to use that as a template for some of the private spaces you've been able to explore, or how did you approach those?
Season 2, we found a house on location for Melissa, and certainly if you appreciate her character, she's very blunt and to the point, and a Philly girl. And we again had conversations with Quinta. I always start with what neighborhood do these people live in? Did they get their house from their grandma? How did this come about? Philadelphia houses architecturally are very hard to find that style in Los Angeles. So our location manager found Melissa's house in, I want to say a part of Eagle Rock, and then we had meetings to discuss, did she buy this house? Did she inherit this? When we started looking, we knew the style of house we were looking for, like a row house style, very stacked living room, dining room, kitchen, very linear concept. I think that was season 2, but I think what we said is, this is a house that's been in Melissa's family for a long time, maybe even her mother's house, like a family house. So that explained some of the ornate details in the house.
Okay.
And when we first see Rubenstein's, the first shots of the bar you see this season are from outside the windows.
Yeah.
That was one of our main directors, Randall Einhorn, and he's one of our EPs. And I thought that was brilliant. He hadn't blocked it that way, but he got there day of and started putting the cameras outside the glass. I thought it looked beautiful. And that was a way of saying, okay, our cameramen are here, they're watching, they're not quite in the action. And then we loosened up, and I think as you go on through the season, the cameras are right inside the bar.
Yeah. Absolutely. And let's actually stay right there on Rubenstein's, because it's, again, that's also a new environment for us. And like you said, that's kind of the place where we see, some of the characters have these after school conversations, which are very different conversations than they would have, at school. So talk a bit about, creating that set and what was kind of important to you and the art department to convey with it. What was the environment, the type of environment you wanted to create with it?
Yeah. So, I think when we started out, Quinta just threw out this, hey, we're going to need a bar this season. I want the characters to meet up at a bar, because she knew she's going to be working in a different part of town. So we said, okay, Quinta works downtown or Franklin Town, if you know that neighborhood in Philly, and the school's in West Philly, right. Far West Philly, Cobb's Creek. And so we said, okay, I think this bar needs to be in University City, which is this area where UPenn, I think there's 7 different universities have campuses there. And then in one tiny corner of my mood board, the tiny corner where I was going to say, hey, because we're in University City, what if we had a couple jerseys of these colleges up? She said, this is Quinta speaking, this should be a sports bar. So we, that as soon as we got onto that similar page, it became very easy to lay it out. We had a combination of booths and tables, and sitting at a bar like any sports bar. We were able to add a dartboard that they wrote an episode around. So it was really that was sort of the workings of it. And it sounds like that process took a long time, but that was like a week. What you don't see a lot, maybe on cameras, we built the entire neighborhood around the bar, because we wanted, again, this season was about getting out. So if you pay attention, you'll see architecturally the area around University City has its own language. It reminded Susan and I, the art director, of a little bit of like Victorian San Francisco. Everything's got a molded detail. So we painted that area. We painted that area to highlight those things, and it's really been nice to not just create the interiors, but to be able to create these big exteriors.
Yeah, and it's been really fun also as as a viewer to see the show, to explore spaces outside of the school or outside of the, like you talked about, we've already seen some of the private spaces in season 2. So it's always nice. That's the kind of the benefit of having multiple seasons, right? You get to explore the show more and more, and you get to open up the world a bit. And I feel like we've been able to see that this season on Abbott in particular.
It's funny that you say that, because we had this discussion, like when we were changing the school facade, how many times do you get a chance to rebuild a massive set like that?
It's true.
Not very often in what I do. So to get a second bite at that and fix things and make it and say, hey, I think this show's going to be around for another 3, 4, whatever seasons, enough to warrant the financial, putting the money into doing something right. It's really, I think the construction crew, maybe at first it was hard to get your head around while you're doing this, and it was very difficult to cut, to deal with these bricks. But I think midway through the process, everyone just kept saying how cool this is to really do something that has some permanence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a perfect note for us to end on, because we're unfortunately out of time. But Michael, thank you so much for walking me through your process for today. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And congratulations on the 3rd season of Abbott.
Thank you, Luca. It's been my pleasure.